Our first job is always to make sure that both sets of ignition switches are off. It's very easy to put them on inadvertently while removing the cockpit covers.
Hello there, my name's Paul Groves and this is my Tiger Moth which we will be using today. I'll start off by firstly demonstrating how to lift the tail to move the aircraft out of the hangar. When lifting the tail, it's better to lift towards the fuselage. There's less likelihood of bending the tail strut assembly. So lifting, get in as close to the fuselage as you can. Obviously don't forget to bend your knees and a hearty lift. And ideally get up to sort of shoulder height. And at this point the aircraft starts to become a lot lighter on the tail. It's just getting to the point on balance. But obviously be aware not to go too high and end up letting go and the aircraft will over tip onto its nose. And then obviously walk the aircraft out of the hangar.
Here you can see how close the lower blade gets to the ground with the tail up, so be particularly careful with it, and similarly while putting it in or out of a shed, the upper blade can get very close to the roof. So it's much better to have the propeller in a horizontal position while pushing it in or out of the shed. Here Paul shows you hooking it up to a ground trolley, which is a great idea. Do be careful connecting it, as the trolley is extremely vulnerable to going up through the rudder and putting a crease in it.
A good place to pull on the aircraft if you've got somebody helping you is to get them positioned at the top of the radius rod here. Ideally at the top where the bracket assembly is, it's a good place to pull. If you go further down there's always danger of damaging the strut fairing attachment. But ideally place your hand at the top and a good hearty pull. And if you've got a couple of people helping you, you can get them to place their hand right at the bottom of the interplane strut assembly and just lightly pull at that point there. That will also assist.
Next we have a good look around the cockpit and make sure that everything is as it should be. Check the condition of all the instruments and then have a good look around the cockpit for foreign objects. You can see here that Paul uses a tie strip for when he's starting his engine on his own, connected to the control column to keep it aft. Ensure that the fire extinguisher is secure, and just as this chap is with his camera, make sure that there's no foreign objects down behind the seat. Don't forget to check under the cushions, as any loose pens or coins may jam the controls. Here we see one of two variations of the fuel cock. It's specially designed to prevent the fuel shutting off by vibration in flight and should be fitted to all Tiger Moths. It operates the sluice valve from the top of the tank which supplies the engine. Don't forget to have a good look in the front cockpit for any foreign objects. Look under the seats, and if the aircraft is to be flown solo, the seat squab should be removed and the harness secured for solo flight. The fuel system water drain is by the sluice valve on the bottom side of the tank. It doesn't really matter exactly where you start your external inspection, but get into a routine of starting in the same place and continuing around the aircraft through 360 degrees. Have a good look at all the flying surfaces, look at the hinge pins, split pins, and all the control cables. Remember also to get down under the aircraft and have a good look at the fittings through which the controls run. Make sure the main wing attachments are secure, and also have a good look at things like the wires and centre section. Any slack in a flying wire should be investigated as it shows structural damage. Remember that the undercarriage gets a severe beating, so that's if the aircraft has been heavy landed, around the centre section of the undercarriage and the wing attachments is when it's first likely to show, or in slack flying wires. When it comes to the propeller, have a good look at its leading edge for condition. If it loses one of the little brass caps, it will give an inordinate vibration in flight, such that it may feel like it's taken the engine out of its bearers. If you turn the propeller backwards, you run the risk of the engine starting on its own. While having a look at the engine, you'll notice that the cowls can be supported on their own rod, and at this time the oil level can be checked and if necessary topped up. Don't overfill it, as it will probably throw it out, particularly if the aircraft is doing aerobatics. On the right side of the engine, Paul's looking for any loose components, any blown exhaust gaskets or cylinder head nuts, or indeed manifold nuts that are coming loose. You can also view the ignition system, and you can see here the manifold nuts on both the exhaust and the inlet manifolds. These are often better seen from looking from underneath the engine and looking upwards. Here's the fuel filter, which should be checked from time to time for any contamination or water. Behind this is the Easy Clean oil filter, which should be given a couple of turns. Here we see the carburettor, flame trap and carburettor heater as fitted to the Gypsy Major in the Tiger Moth. You'll see as the throttle is opened, the linkages automatically operate a flap valve to select warm or cold air. The system is basically automatic in that the engine stays in hot air all the time until it's just short of full power, when it automatically selects cold. So it is a fully automatic carburettor heater system. However, do be aware that if you're in a long descent, the engine will cool and icing is still probable. It's a good system and works well, providing you do remember to occasionally warm the engine on a long descent. Here's the aileron push rod, which will be inspected for damage. While doing your daily inspection, don't forget to check the controls for full, free and correct operation. Here Paul's checking out the differential aileron control to show that the aileron goes much further up than it does go down. The reason the aircraft is designed like this is to reduce adverse aileron yaw. Here's the rudder cables, and underneath, as down with the main undercarriage, down at the back in the tail skid area, check it for any damage. While we're looking at that, we're going to use an aircraft that's in South Africa to have a look round. Any distortion in the fabric should be investigated, as that indicates structural damage, both under the wings, down the fuselage. Don't forget to look underneath the fuselage for anything that's gone up, particularly if it's been operating on rough strips. Here's the aileron connection cables to the bottom of the stick and the tail surfaces. All the fabric should be taut. Inspect the ends of the control cables, their ferrules, for condition and security. Paul is rocking the aircraft to show how relatively soft the Tiger's undercarriage is. You can see how easy it is to get a wingtip close to the ground and damage it, and that will be of interest during our flying or taxiing. So once inspected, the aircraft should be securely chocked, ready to start up. So when you think of it, not much has really changed over the years.
Flying calls for care as well as courage. Time spent in learning the details of your aircraft may one day save your life. Don't imagine that a daily inspection alone makes your aircraft airworthy. Only maintenance does that. You can help by observation, good sense, and reporting to ground crew. If the aircraft goes badly, tell the ground crew about it. If it goes well, don't forget to thank them for it. Method takes time, but even that is better than taking a toss. Always check petrol and oil. Ground crews are most dependable as a rule, and it's only once in a while you will be let down by unexpected petrol shortage. But once may be enough. When engine running, have good and constant communication with your ground crew. Give your full attention to the job. An accident taking a second to happen may take years to forget. Learn all you can about handling your engine, both on the ground and in the air. Use engine sense.
So, with the chocks inserted, it's time to start up our own engine.